Love Beyond the Smoke. Chapter 1. A Moment Lost. The clang of the factory bell rang through the air, signaling the start of another long day. The streets of the town were cloaked in a thick grey fog, the kind that never quite cleared, clinging to the damp air like a consistent reminder of the coal that fed the steam engines. Elena Wren stood at the threshold of her small, weather-beaten cottage, a place that had once held laughter, but now only felt heavy with silence. Her hands, raw from days spent scrubbing laundry or sorting scraps in the factory, reached for the doorframe, her only connection to the world outside. The children's laughter was a ghost that lingered in the corners of the room, a distant echo of a life lost. Elena closed her eyes for a moment, the weight of the past pressing on her chest. Her brown dress, once neat and fitting, now tattered and faded, clung to her frame as if it too carried the memory of better days. Elena closed her eyes, her eyelids heavy with exhaustion. The sounds of the town, the clattering of distant factory machines, the endless hiss of steam seemed to fade as a thick, oppressive silence pressed in around her. Her breath slowed, and the fog in her mind deepened, pulling her back into memories she could scarcely bear to visit. She saw him then, Thomas, her husband, though it was a fleeting vision blurred like the fog that had swallowed the world that day. He'd been a bright, laughing man once, before the weight of life became too much for him. They were happy for such a short time. Her heart still clung to those moments. She could still feel his warmth, his hand brushing against hers, the promise of a future they both believed in. But that happiness had faded fast, as all things did. His smile had turned into grimace, his laughter lost beneath the haze of liquor and disappointment. He was gone long before the children had grown. She never knew where he went or what happened to him, only that one evening he left and never came back. A note, a whisper in the wind, and she was alone. She heard they found him dead, but she never seen the body. Maybe it was for the best. Alone, pregnant with his child, alone with no way to understand how life could go on without him. Elena could still feel the weight of those early days, carrying his child beneath her heart, the world growing darker with every step she took. She had to survive, though, for the life inside her. And then the day arrived. 2 children, twins, tiny hands grasping at the world. They grew faster than she could keep up with, their laughter ringing through the small house, filling every corner with their innocence. They learned to walk, their unsteady steps echoing like music through her tired bones. The days were hard, but she found joy in their small triumphs, in the bright future she imagined for them, in the warmth of their little hands. But that was before everything shattered. It had been a late day at the factory. The clock had dragged on, and the usual fatigue had settled in her bones, deep and unyielding. She'd hurried down the street, desperate to get home, to hold them, to hug their soft bodies against her. And then she saw them, the boys, her boys. They were there in the distance, on the train tracks, playing as if the world couldn't touch them. The sound of the train's whistle sliced through the fog, a distant scream that sent a jolt of panic through her chest. Her heart stopped. "Boys!" she screamed. Her voice cracked as she stumbled forward. They didn't hear her. They were laughing, their small figures lost in the fog, unaware of the danger speeding towards them. Elena's feet barely touched the ground as she ran, as though her legs could defy time itself. But it wasn't fast enough. The train was coming, its black body cutting through the mist with terrifying speed. She watched, her breath caught in her throat as the train loomed closer, impossibly fast. She tried to scream, to run faster, but the world had become a blur of sound and terror. And then they were gone. The whistle of the train echoed in her ears, deafening, endless. Elena stood frozen, the horror of that moment searing into her chest like a branding iron. The coldness crept in slowly, and the pain, sharp and unbearable, began to settle deep into her bones. Her heart broke in 1,000 pieces, and yet, even in her grief, it felt like the world had numbed her, turning her emotions into a dull ache. And for days, weeks, it all felt muted. The vibrant love she'd once felt for her children had turned into shadows, whispers, fragments of memories too painful to relive. Every morning, every hour, Elena woke up to the heavy weight of silence, the absence of those who had once filled her life with light. She had nothing left but the remnants of them, their small clothes, their toys, their laughter that echoed in the back of her mind. The pain never fully left, but it became easier to hide, easier to ignore, easier to fade into the same grey fog that surrounded her world. The sound of the work whistle pierced through the fog, sharp and commanding, snapping Elena back to the present. It was the same sound that had marked the start of every long, grueling day since the boys had gone, a reminder that the world moved on, indifferent to the pain of those caught in its relentless churn. She opened her eyes, the lingering weight of the past slowly lifting as her breath steadied, though the ache in her chest remained. She stood in the doorway for a moment longer, her hands still resting on the frame, feeling the cold wood beneath her fingers. The town was still there, unchanged, waiting. The fog lingered like a heavy blanket, muffling the world outside, but the machines in the distance had begun their steady hum, calling her to work once more. The cottage, with its cracked windows and fading walls, seemed to close in around her. The ghosts of her children left her, their small hands and their bright eyes flickered in the corners of her mind. But they, like the warmth of her lost happiness, were fading, becoming distant and unreachable. Get up. The thought was a quiet whisper, but it held weight. She could feel the hunger in her stomach, the demand for bread and water for warmth. The house was cold and her heart barely held a flame these days. She couldn't afford the luxury of remembering, not now. There was work to be done. With a slow, deliberate motion, Elena turned away from the door. The moment of peace she had found in her memories was gone, drowned beneath the need for survival. She shuffled across the worn floorboards, her bare feet making little sound against the wood, the faintest echo of her own weariness. The faded brown dress clung to her body as she reached for her coat, a thin thing, patched and threadbare, but it was all she had. The fabric felt heavy against her skin, as if the weight of her grief and struggle had soaked into the very fibers. But she didn't have time to dwell, not anymore. As she stepped outside into the damp, chilly air, the familiar hum of the town greeted her, an industrial cacophony that she had grown used to, the steam engines churning in the distance, the clanging of metal, and the endless rhythm of the factory machines. The world was changing, but it didn't care about her pain, her loss. It simply moved forward. Elena pulled her coat tight around her and began walking toward the factory, the fog swallowing her steps as she disappeared into the mist. The morning was cold, but the harshness of it seemed to match the rawness inside her. The train tracks, where everything had ended, lay a few streets over, but she avoided them now. She didn't need to see them, not anymore.